Some horrors come from the outside, unexpected, creeping in when we least expect them. Others come from within, the kind you carry without knowing, the kind that grows unnoticed until it's too late. Tonight we explore two nightmares, one about something that was never meant to live, the other about something that refuses to stay trapped. A woman who was never truly alone, a reflection that decides it wants more than just to mimic. Some nightmares don't wait for sleep. Some are waiting for you right now. Stay until the end. Tell me, have you ever questioned what's inside you or what's staring back at you? Like, subscribe, but most importantly, be careful what you ignore, because the things you choose to forget, they never forget you. Lena Carter always had pain. It was part of her, as natural as breathing. A dull ache in her stomach, sometimes sharp, sometimes deep, sometimes barely there at all. It had followed her for as long as she could remember, an unwelcome presence woven into the fabric of her life. Doctors had dismissed it. Stress, they said, poor digestion, food allergies. They ran tests, prescribed medications, changed her diet. Nothing helped. Nothing explained the way the pain moved, as if it had a mind of its own. Her family waved it off. "You're always worrying about something," her mother would say. If it was serious, they would have found something by now. So Lena learned to live with it until it started getting worse. The pain that had once been a familiar nuisance became something else, something sharper, something heavier. She could feel it curling beneath her ribs, pressing against her insides like a hand trying to push through from the other side. It came in waves now, random, unpredictable. Some days she was fine. Other days, she doubled over, unable to breathe, fingers gripping the edge of the counter as her vision blurred. Something wasn't right. She stopped telling people about it. They would only dismiss her. They always did. But at night, when she lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling the pain pulse and shift inside her, she thought about the one thing none of them had ever considered. What if this wasn't just pain? What if it was something else? Lena wanted answers. She wanted relief. She wanted her body to be her own again. But some things don't let go that easily. Some things don't want to be removed. The pain had become unbearable. It was no longer an ache, no longer something she could push aside with a handful of painkillers and a forced smile. It was a presence now, something coiled deep inside her, pressing against her ribs, digging into the walls of her stomach like it was trying to make space for itself. Lena sat in the doctor's office, hands pressed to her lower abdomen, as she tried to focus on the words spilling from the physician's mouth. Abnormal findings, unusual mass, requires further investigation. The fluorescent lights above her hummed too loudly, the air in the room feeling too thick as she nodded, pretending to understand. They scheduled a scan for the next morning. She spent the night staring at the ceiling, feeling the pain shift and pulse beneath her skin. It was alive in a way pain shouldn't be. It was waiting. The scan was supposed to bring relief, an explanation, a diagnosis with a solution. But when the doctor returned with the results, his face was pale. "There's something inside you." His voice was careful, measured. "It appears to be remnants of a twin, a connection known as fetus in fetu." Lena blinked. The words didn't make sense. "A twin?" He nodded. "It's rare, but it happens. A mass of tissue, undeveloped bones, hair, teeth absorbed in utero. Most of the time it's harmless. But in your case, it's grown. It's causing your pain." Lena's fingers dug into the fabric of her jeans. Something inside her, something that was never supposed to be there. "We need to remove it." The words rang in her head long after she left the office, long after she drove home, long after she sat at her kitchen table, hands shaking around a glass of water she couldn't bring herself to drink. It should have been a relief, a mass, a tumor, a growth that could be taken out, a problem with a clear solution. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the faint glow of her phone screen, scrolling through articles on fetus and fetu, reading about the rare cases where the tissue showed signs of movement, of life, the relief never came. She tried to sleep. Then she heard it, soft, faint, at the very edge of her awareness. A whisper, not from the room, not from her thoughts, from inside her. And it didn't sound like her. Lena stopped sleeping. The whisper wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a presence, curling in the back of her mind like a second consciousness. Something coiled deep inside her that should not have been there. At first, it was barely audible, like hearing a voice through water, muffled and distorted. Then it became clearer, louder, closer. Lena. She jolted awake, heart hammering against her ribs. The room was silent, but inside her, the whisper remained. At work, in the grocery store, during phone calls with her mother, it would murmur beneath her thoughts, just low enough to make her question if she had imagined it. But she knew better now. Why do you get to live? The words made her grip the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. Her stomach contracted painfully, a dull, twisting pull beneath her ribs. The voice slithered up her throat, curling around her tongue, pressing against her teeth like it was trying to use her mouth. She clamped her lips shut, forcing herself to swallow it down. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. But then the twitching started. Her fingers would jerk suddenly when she tried to type. Her legs locked up when she tried to walk. Her hands twitched on their own, flexing and stretching without her permission. One evening, she caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. She stood there, watching, waiting. Her hands trembled as she reached up to touch her face. Her reflection didn't move. For a long, breathless second, it just stared back at her, as if it was waiting for her to notice. Then it smiled. Lena stumbled back, knocking over a glass of water. When she looked again, her reflection was normal, moving in sync, mirroring her movements. But the damage had already been done. The next morning, she woke up on the floor. She didn't remember falling, didn't remember getting out of bed. Her blankets were tangled around her legs, the pillow still on the mattress, untouched. Then she looked down at her hands. Her nails were broken. There were scratches on the hardwood floor. She had crawled. The whispers were no longer whispers. They were breaths against her skin. They were fingers inside her muscles. The night before her surgery, she told herself she wouldn't sleep. But something had other plans. She woke up unable to move. Her eyes were open. She could see the dim light from the street filtering through her curtains. She could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the other room. She could feel her heartbeat hammering too fast, too loud. But she couldn't move. And then she felt it. A shift. Something pressed against the inside of her ribs. A slow, crawling sensation, like fingers dragging beneath her skin. Her breath hitched. She wanted to scream, wanted to sob. Then the pressure moved up. A lump formed in the center of her chest, stretching her skin outward, pushing against the bone, shifting beneath the surface like something was trying to push through. Her lips parted involuntarily. Her throat tightened as her lungs forced out air. A voice came out, but it wasn't hers. I want to be born. Lena couldn't move. The voice had stolen her breath, her control, her body. She was trapped inside herself, suffocating beneath the weight of something that had always been there, waiting, biding its time. The lump beneath her ribs pulsed, pressing against her skin from the inside. It was alive. The door burst open. Her mother's voice, frantic, a rush of movement, hands gripping her arms, lifting her onto a stretcher. The paramedics spoke in hushed, urgent tones, but their words barely registered. She was still paralyzed. As they wheeled her into the ambulance, the whispers began again. Don't let them take me. The voice wasn't coming from her mind anymore. It was coming from her chest. She felt it, the vibrations rippling through her bones, sinking into her muscles. The paramedics didn't react. They didn't hear it. Only she could hear it. Lena, it murmured, why do you get to live? The hospital lights burned overhead as they rolled her through the corridor. Machines beeped. The scent of antiseptic filled her lungs. She tried to scream, tried to tell them it was awake, but her lips barely parted. I don't want to be removed, the voice whispered, softer now, curling against her ribs like a child clinging to its mother. I want to be born. The anesthesia mask was placed over her face. She tried to fight it. Her fingers twitched. The doctor's voices blurred. I want to be born. Darkness swallowed her whole. Lena woke up days later. The world was blurred, distant, drifting in and out of focus. The steady beep of a heart monitor filled the room. The weight in her stomach was gone. The pressure that had been inside her for so long had vanished. The surgery had been a success. She should have felt relief, but something was wrong. Her fingers twitched against the sheets. The movement felt foreign, as if her hands weren't hers. She flexed them, staring at the way the tendons shifted beneath her skin, the way her fingers curled and uncurled. The motions were slightly off, too smooth, too controlled. She swallowed. Her throat ached, raw from the breathing tube they must have inserted during surgery. She licked her lips and took a deep breath. The sound that came out was wrong. Her voice was different. Not completely, not enough for a doctor to notice, but enough for her to notice. She tried again. Hello? The sound of it sent ice down her spine. Lena's heart pounded against her ribs. She shoved the blankets off and swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her arms felt too light. Her legs trembled as she stood, the weight of her own body unfamiliar. The floor was cold beneath her feet as she stepped toward the bathroom. She hesitated in the doorway. She didn't want to look. Her hands trembled as she reached for the light switch. The fluorescent glow flickered on. She forced herself forward, stepping in front of the mirror. Her breath caught in her throat. Her face stared back at her, but it wasn't her. Her eyes were a little too wide. Her lips were a little too full. Her skin looked smoother. Then slowly her reflection smiled. Lena didn't. Her chest tightened. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. The reflection's head tilted slightly, and then, in a voice that wasn't quite hers, it whispered, "Thank you for letting me out." Lena staggered back from the mirror, her breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. The room around her felt warped, stretched in ways it shouldn't be. Her reflection wasn't supposed to move on its own. She forced herself to lift her hands, curling her fingers into her palms. Her reflection mirrored the action perfectly this time, but she knew what she had seen. It had smiled before she did. She shook her head violently, gripping the edges of the sink, forcing herself to breathe. The surgery was over. It was supposed to be over. She was supposed to be herself again. But her skin felt wrong. Her bones felt too light. Her movements, no matter how careful, felt borrowed. The reflection tilted its head again, just slightly. Her chest clenched. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "What are you?" The reflection's lips parted. And then it spoke. "I'm you now." Lena's scream never left her throat. Some horrors don't come from the outside. Some live inside us, waiting for the right moment to take over. Lena Carter had carried something with her since birth. She had ignored it. She had tried to remove it, but it had always been waiting to be born. Now tell me, have you ever looked into a mirror and felt like something was just slightly off? Like the person staring back wasn't really you? If so, you might not want to hear what happens next, because not all horror is inside us. Sometimes it stares back at us, waiting, watching. A mirror is supposed to show you who you are. But what if one day it doesn't? Claire Monroe wasn't the type to scare easily. She wasn't the type to believe in ghost stories, urban legends, or the kind of nonsense whispered around campfires. But that was before the hospital stay. Before the nights spent staring at the sterile ceiling tiles, wondering if she'd ever feel normal again. Now normal felt like something she couldn't quite touch. She had been discharged a week ago, given a clean bill of health. The doctors told her she was fine. She had survived. She should have felt relieved. Instead, everything felt wrong. At first, she thought it was just the after effects of the medication, the exhaustion, the mental fog that comes from being stuck in a hospital bed for too long. But the feeling didn't go away. The air in her house felt too thick, not humid, not stale, just heavy, like the atmosphere itself had gained weight. Walking through her own home felt like wading through something just beneath the surface. Things weren't where she left them. The remote control wasn't on the couch, it was across the room. Her mug wasn't in the sink, it was back on the table. The closet door she always kept shut was slightly open. Claire told herself it was just her mind playing tricks on her. Then she noticed the mirror. She had always hated that mirror. It had been there when she moved in, mounted on the wall of the bedroom, large and rectangular. the kind that reflected almost the entire room. She had thought about removing it, but it was bolted in, stuck, part of the house. She tried to ignore it, but every time she walked past it, she felt something in her gut, like her reflection lingered just a second too long, like it was waiting for her to notice. It started subtly, so small that Claire nearly missed it. A flicker, a hesitation, a fraction of a second where her reflection didn't quite keep up. She had been brushing her hair, staring at herself absent-mindedly, lost in thought. She turned to grab her phone from the nightstand, but in the mirror, she didn't move right away. It was fast, so fast she nearly convinced herself it didn't happen. But a chill crawled up her spine. She turned back, her eyes scanning her own features. Her reflection looked normal. Still, something inside her twisted, like her instincts knew something her rational mind refused to believe. She convinced herself it was nothing, a trick of the light, stress. But it kept happening. She caught it again 2 nights later while getting ready for bed. She reached up to turn off the lamp, her body shifting in the dim light. Her reflection should have mirrored her perfectly, but for the briefest moment, it didn't. It was out of sync, delayed, wrong. Her stomach clenched, but she forced a laugh. She was exhausted. Her mind was playing tricks on her. She had just spent too much time alone. That's all it was. Then one evening, it didn't move at all. Claire had been cleaning, music playing low in the background. She stood up from the edge of the bed, stretching, rolling her shoulders. Out of habit, her eyes flicked toward the mirror, and her reflection didn't move. Her breath caught. It just stood there, staring back. Her lips parted, the air thick and stale in her throat. Slowly, hesitantly, she lifted her hand. Her reflection stayed still. Then, after a long, impossible moment, it raised its hand. Too slow, too deliberate, too late. Claire stumbled back, her hip hitting the nightstand, the lamp teetering dangerously. Her chest tightened, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. She blinked, her breath ragged. And just like that, her reflection was normal again, moving in perfect sync, perfectly aligned, like nothing had happened, like it had never been out of place at all. Claire ran. She didn't care if she was being ridiculous. She didn't care if it was all in her head. She grabbed the throw blanket from the chair and covered the mirror completely. Out of sight, out of mind. She wouldn't look at it again. She couldn't. But that night, as she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, she felt something. A heaviness in the air. A weight. Like someone was standing right by the mirror, waiting. Claire knew she shouldn't look. She had covered the mirror for a reason, but something about it pulled at her, like an itch beneath the skin, a whisper at the edge of her thoughts. Days passed and she refused to acknowledge it, refused to let her eyes wander in its direction. But that night she woke up standing in front of it. She didn't remember getting out of bed, didn't remember crossing the room. The blanket that had been draped over the glass was gone, crumpled at her feet, and her reflection was staring at her. She wasn't moving. Her breath hitched. Her pulse slammed against her ribs. She lifted a hand. Her reflection did nothing. Her lips parted, the air thick in her throat. It was watching her. It was waiting. Then it spoke. "I've been waiting." The voice didn't come from her mouth. It came from inside the glass. Claire screamed. She turned, bolting out of the room, nearly tripping over her own feet. The house felt too small, too suffocating, pressing in on her. She grabbed her car keys, her vision swimming, her hands shaking so badly she could barely twist the doorknob. The moment she was outside, she didn't stop. She didn't look back. She spent the night at a motel, refused to go home, refused to let herself near a single mirror. For days, she ignored it, tried to pretend it wasn't real, but something was different now. She felt it, a weight in the air, a sensation she couldn't explain. She avoided reflections as much as possible, but sometimes she caught glimpses in car windows, storefront glass, the back of her phone screen, and that was when she noticed. Her reflection was moving when she wasn't. She'd be sitting at a cafe, looking out the window, watching the world pass her by. Then she'd glance down at the glass tabletop, see the faint reflection of herself, and watch her own head turn toward her. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, refusing to roll over, refusing to face the mirror. But sleep always won in the end. And one night she woke up with a chill running down her spine. Her eyes cracked open. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with something wrong. And then she saw it, her mirror. She had her back to it. She shouldn't have been able to see anything. But in the corner of her vision, through the dim glow of the streetlight, filtering through the curtains, she saw herself in the mirror, lying in bed, sleeping. Her breath caught. She was awake, but in the mirror, she wasn't. Her mind struggled to process it, her vision blurring with fear, her muscles locked in place. Then, slowly, her reflection opened its eyes. Her stomach twisted violently. It wasn't her, it was something else. And then, it moved. Not like a reflection should, not mirroring her. It turned, it stood, it walked away, not into the room, into the mirror. And Claire was left, lying there, staring at the empty glass, with nothing staring back. The next morning, Claire didn't want to look. She told herself she wouldn't. If she ignored it, if she didn't acknowledge what had happened the night before, maybe it would all go away. She moved carefully around her room, eyes locked on the floor, on the bed, on the door, anywhere but the mirror. She forced herself to breathe evenly, to act normal. She brushed her hair in the bathroom with the door half closed, her toothbrush moving mechanically against her teeth as she refused to meet her own gaze in the medicine cabinet. But something felt wrong. The air in the house was off, dense like a storm waiting to break. The silence wasn't normal, it was too thick, pressing in on her ears. Even the floor felt strange beneath her bare feet, like she was walking somewhere she shouldn't be. She couldn't take it anymore. Her heart thundered against her ribs as she turned back toward her bedroom. Her feet moved without thinking, without permission. She stopped in front of the mirror, and there she was. Her reflection was back. Claire's breath hitched, her stomach twisting as her eyes swept over the image of herself. But something was wrong. The details were almost perfect. Almost. Her eyes were just a little too wide, her mouth a little too full, and then she saw it. The corners of its lips stretching ever so slightly, the beginnings of a smile. Claire's fingers trembled at her sides. She felt the air shift, felt the weight of something watching her. But it wasn't just watching, it was waiting. She had to know. She lifted her hand, hesitating just for a second before slowly reaching toward the glass. Her reflection reached out to meet her. Her breath shuddered in her throat, fingers shaking as they moved closer, closer. Then she saw it, the fingers in the glass. They weren't hers, the shape was wrong. The joints were too long, the skin was too smooth. The hand pressed against the other side of the mirror. Claire jerked her arm back. The reflection didn't. It kept reaching forward. And then, it stepped out. The glass rippled, warped, melted like liquid. The figure emerged, stretching into her space, into her world. Claire couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. Her reflection stood before her, wearing her face, her skin, her body. But its eyes weren't hers. The smile spread wider. Claire tried to scream. And then, the mirror swallowed her whole. Two stories, two horrors, one terrifying truth. Sometimes the things we fear most aren't lurking outside. They're already inside. A woman who carried something within her. Something that refused to die. A reflection that waited, watched, and took what it wanted. Now tell me, have you ever looked into a mirror and felt like something was just slightly off? Like the person staring back wasn't really you? Have you ever felt something inside you that didn't quite belong? If so, maybe you've already been marked. Maybe you're next. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments. Would you have survived these encounters? Would you have noticed the signs before it was too late? And if you think you're safe, just remember, some stories don't need to be told. They're already happening. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because the next horror story might not just be fiction. This is haunt, fear, horror, stories we dare not tell. Stories we dare not tell.